You're listening to In-Fisherman Storyline, North America's top voice in multi-species freshwater angling.
We've got another episode of In-Fisherman Storyline right here. We're excited to have you as we are growing this podcast and creating different elements and different topics. We're kind of experimenting with some off-the-wall ideas. We have a after hours edition. We have a hard copy edition. After hours, I guess if you're creative enough, you can understand it's generally me and some buddies ranting about industry situations. And we have a hard copy where we talk about the magazine. We talk about television show, kind of give you a preview of what's coming from In-Fisherman. And then we also have this one. This is called the Front Porch edition of In-Fisherman Storyline, where we connect with friends and industry people, and we want to tell stories about, I guess, what created the ultimate vision of where they're at, the beginning, the origin story, if you will, of recognizable brands, recognizable personalities, the humble beginnings, if you will. And there's going to be a lot more of that to come. We also have an on the road bucket, I guess, where we're going to take a portable podcast kit with us, and we're going to visit with outfitters. We're going to visit with guides on the front porch or on the back patio of their outfit or their resort and kind of get their story. So many cool things. We haven't done one of those yet, but that is going to be coming fairly quickly. And then starting in 2025, our 25th anniversary at In-Fisherman, the 50th anniversary at In-Fisherman, we're going to tell the story of In-Fisherman from its very humble beginnings with all of the players that you're going to recognize. I just want to promote that. You won't see any of those until the year turns over, but we're working on that right now. So today, this is the Front Porch edition. I'm excited about this. We're going to get to know a guy that has a deep passion for the outdoors. I imagine that he has a lot of overlap during the season. Not sure if he should go fishing or hunting, or what he should go hunting for, or what he should chase after when he's on the water. But Aaron Ambur is the president of Michigan-based Nexus Outdoors. Now, this includes some brands you're probably pretty familiar with. Nexus might not be a familiar name, but it will be by the end of the show. But brands like ScentLock and Blocker Outdoors, Hardcore Waterfowl, Whitewater, American Range Systems, and then 2O Gear. We're going to learn a little bit more about that. Aaron, thanks for taking the time being with us today.
Hey, Thomas, happy Friday to you, and look for the conversation. Appreciate the opportunity to be on your show today and tell some lies, tell some secrets, and see where we go on the journey today.
There are a lot of stories we could tell, and I like your office seems to have some nice creature comforts in it, sort of like ours here, and that tells me a lot about what motivates you. I like to have. There's pictures on my office wall. I'm actually in our studio here, but that it just kind of remind me why I do what I do. And I think that anybody that's worked in the industry for an extended period of time would say that, there are people that consider it a job, but it's a passion first. And I think if you're able to connect the two, you're a pretty blessed individual, because you do have to put up with some corporate stuff. You have to put up with stuff that maybe every job has. I don't think anybody would argue that. But if you're able to interweave your passion into that, it's barely a job at all. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, Thomas, I think the only difference is I don't know what your buddies think, that's all they think I do is hunt and fish, and they forget that we have a business to run and we have to make some money and drive some sales at the end of the day. I don't know what your crowd thinks of you.
It's the same thing. In fact, my in-laws, they don't fish, never have fished. They don't hunt. I've actually had my father-in-law out turkey hunting. He's killed a couple birds with me. My brother-in-law has slowly started to pick up the sport, but really, before I was around, I don't know what my wife did for fun, and I give her a hard time for that, because it's like, we kind of live an adventure lifestyle. But yeah, I say that, but you're 100% right. My dad he still gives me a hard time. He's like, well, if you were putting shingles on, you'd actually have a real job. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That sounds terrible. I did enough of that, but I do know that if you want to sustain this lifestyle, if you want to earn your living working in the industry, there is a tremendous amount of work that not only justifies your existence to an employer, but in your case, overseeing brands that are very popular and recognizable by both hunters and fishermen. So you're right. Finding time to go can often be difficult.
Yeah, it's great though that, this industry, as you well know, Tom, is small. So Even though I'm great friends with competitors, and I've had a vast amount of experience with brands through my career. Even though we're competitors, I'm telling you what, there's nothing like the outdoors, because once you get it in your blood, as you well know, it's hard to get out, because no matter what the battle is of the day, you have the common bond of the outdoors. And I don't care if it's turkey hunting or fishing or hunting. I mean, think about those stories that break every ice that has ever existed, between froze, if you will. So I love the outdoors. I'm just really blessed to be in the industry and, make a career out of it, which, going to work every day to do something that we passionately care about. I mean, no offense to selling toilet paper, but to sell what we do and sell passion and sell joy, and have brands that are able to accompany people and experiences with friends, families, buddies. I mean, it's, we're pretty blessed to be where we're at. No doubt about it.
No doubt, and one of the things I've always noticed, I've been in the industry now for 19 years. I've covered a lot of tournaments. I started out, a little bit after the time I started, but I was attending and covering in the day, the FLW Walleye Tour, and got to know a lot of those guys and went on numbers of events. I moved on through the world, worked at Bassmaster for a while, and whenever you have these events where you have pro anglers come together, the conversation almost inevitably turns to hunting. They'll work on their fishing stuff on the water. They'll talk about that. But when it's after hours, when we're kicking back, getting some food off the grill, drinks are flowing, people are just hanging out and get to know each other. The what really brings people together is the outdoor stories, I think, that are not part of the profession. It's really how do we connect outside of what we're doing here. And yeah, we're talking about fishing during the day, on the water, shooting video, shooting pictures, but there is a kind of a bond, I think, that exists within the industry, kind of like what you said, that you're all the same. We're all a little bit redneck, whether we're north or south or east or west. We all have that internal outdoor drive, and really that brings us together. But Aaron, we all start somewhere. We all have
Yeah.
somebody that kind of encouraged an element to the outdoors. My dad would joke to this day. He's like, "Yeah, if I'd have known what kind of a crazy outdoorsman you would have turned into, I don't know if I'd ever bought you a fishing rod." And we laugh about that. But it took my dad investing a little bit of time to get me outdoors, and I still relate back to those early days of fishing with my kids, and I think about what made me, and I've made it a priority of my own to not get away from my grassroots, to not to ever forget where I came from. And I think from the few times we've talked on the phone, and the way that your products resound among outdoorsmen, I think you're probably the same way. So someone had to get you started. And I want to start our conversation today with a little bit about your origin story, where you came from, and how you developed this passion that you have for the outdoors.
Yeah, Thomas, thanks. I mean, it's been a dream, I'll tell you that. I'm a simple farm and ranch kid from western South Dakota. So when you think about me and my position a day, and for those that are in a very simple beginning, I grew up on a farm and ranch, and I was 20 miles from the nearest town. So I'd ride the bus for an hour and a half every day to get to whether it was elementary or middle school, or when I was in high school. And to that end, luckily I didn't have to skip a generation to learn about the outdoors. There's those that their dad or mom never hunts, and they learn from their grandfather. My dad Michael was one of those guys that his dad did not hunt, and some way somehow I still remember stories from my dad when he's going to Black Hills State out in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and before there was publications and about how to go archery hunting. He told me the first time he was shooting a bow, he was shooting a recurve left-handed, and he was a right-handed guy, to jumping up into these pine trees when he's going to school in Spearfish, South Dakota, and bow hunting and trying to kill deer. And that was back in the 60s. So luckily my dad, as hard as we worked on the farm, Thomas, one thing, I'd say I was abused as a kid. I learned how to work. I'll tell you that. We were working really hard. But one thing my dad And my mom was the outdoors too. My dad, I tell you, as hard as we worked, we played hard. And so my most vivid memories growing up on the farm and ranch is, my dad taking me on his back, crossing the White River, South Dakota, which is a tributary going into the Missouri River system. And, it's 3, 4 foot deep. And in the morning, jumping on his back. And I still remember that moon coming down on that milky white river and taking me to the tree stand with him. And so from memories like that to, jump, I did a lot of bass pond fish. I'd take my sister down there in my 3-wheeler back in the days where 3-wheelers were legal and could ride them around. I mean,
I've
and,
wrecked
and
my
we're,
fair share of 3-wheelers too.
yeah, I broke out my tooth in my 3-wheeler, ramping it when I wasn't supposed to, and mom and dad were gone. Um, but that's what we lived in, is the outdoors. So fishing in the bass ponds to, I cut my teeth fishing up on the Missouri River. So you think about, back in the day, it hasn't been that long ago where the Missouri River was just a river, and it was before they
Hmm.
dammed it and flooded all
Oh,
these
wow.
areas. And Thomas, I one of our email communications, I think you remember me showing it was an old tri-hull boat with the proud In-Fisherman sticker at the front of that old tri-hull boat that's sitting on my uncle's farm right now, out in the farmyard, hasn't been used to the back of the day, an old ski boat that I
Hmm.
remember sitting in the shop when we were rewiring it and had a little Minn Kota trolling motor, a clip on the back. And I mean, so when I think about a moment, there wasn't a moment. It just seemed like, Thomas, that it's been in my blood. And luckily I had great set of parents that promoted it. I had abilities on a farm and ranch where, all the neighbors knew me. I'd ripping around on my 3-wheeler with a BB gun or trapping coons down the river for a guy let me deer hunt. So I mean,
Hmm.
it was a marvelous upbringing in the western part of South Dakota. And since then I was able to work at the world's foremost outfitter. I worked there for about 16 years in western Nebraska in their corporate buying office. So I've had great professional experience there and a great set of values and a great company. And I've been at Nexus Outdoors since 2016 and seen some marvelous things here as well. So but I'll never go back. I think that dirt that you grow up in, that's under your fingernails, that's in your bones and your
Hmm.
soul. I just don't remember a day not loving everything the outdoors, Thomas.
Well, and having parents that see that and understand that it kept you busy and was valuable to your upbringing is important. And I would agree with you. We're blessed in that. And I grew up in Iowa farm country, and um, you know I I'm a writer. I understand AP style, and I understand correct grammar, but I really cut my teeth fishing a farm creek. Now, the rest of the world's going to say creek, but where I grew up, and it will always to the end of my days be called a creek because it was dirty, it was small, and it had a lot of carp in it and some catfish. But you know that molded me, and I think even before then, my dad had me out making sure I was going when I could. But when I ask for a point, there's 2 points in my life that directed me into the career side of things, and it was a desire to learn. And my dad, admittedly, he'd tell you he doesn't live and die by hunting and fishing. He'll go. A lot of times he'll go with me, so we have opportunities to get together. But he won't run a bait caster. I let him cast one of my bait casters one time, and he turned it. He like unspooled the entire thing, and I will never let him touch another one. But 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 he saw the drive, so he bought me a bow. I think I was 12, and that first season in Iowa, I saw 3 deer, but I was so enamored by it. I swore I would never ever have a season that was that tough again. And that's I've had some tough seasons since then. I'll assure you. But what happened the next year? I bought North American whitetail. I subscribed to Game and Fish. I soaked up as much as I could in the print world, and the next year, my brother, my dad, and I, we all killed bucks with our bows. Now they were small, by measuring standards, but they were so big into how that catapulted me forward because I discovered you could get content to teach you how to do things. You didn't necessarily have to have someone lead you around if you're willing to invest and learn. And In-Fisherman did that for me with fishing. I could take you to the spot on the lake just northwest of Iowa City where I caught my very first Texas rig fish. And I'm going to tell that story on this podcast probably every single time because it was so important to me understanding the mechanics, and I learned that all from a video and the magazine that I got. So, I think you're 100% right that the value of recognizing where you're from and I guess keeping that dirt under your fingernails, if you will, for the rest of your life, it makes you more authentic. And that's a big thing. I'm sure you'll agree with this. You've probably met a bunch of people out there that are more into getting, we'll call it free gear. They want press, they want pictures taken of them, when really they're missing opportunities to meet other people and to get their story and to learn from them. I've committed to being a sponge. I want to learn from other people as much as possible. I don't want to be filled up to where I don't have room to learn things anymore. That's a fascinating part of the outdoors. But as we get into the business of this sport, I mean, people have to make products that make us successful. They have to innovate. They have to meet angler and hunter demands. And I mean, before I met you, I have numbers of scent lock products and that I still use today, and I think very highly of them. And I'm like, I traveled the country twice with a bag that you guys make, and it doesn't look like it's been used. So you understand as an outdoorsman, and I think this is my point is to kind of launch our conversation even further here is if you're not participating in the sports that you're trying to develop and sell products for, how can people believe you, right? Talk a little bit about your investment in the sport across the board and what it is that gets you out of bed in the morning to make quality products.
Yeah, I think one of the things, words that comes to my mind is just authenticity. So, there's a lot of designers and companies that can make product. I think that which separates people that can just create product to those that are actually really usable and effective products is authenticity. And Thomas, it goes right into what you said. It's about us that have been engaged in the sport. Honestly, I live a little bit more vicariously through people these days, as I'd like to admit. But I can tell you from a young age to even today, I get out there and do it a lot. And everyone in our company here, Nexus Outdoors, we're all passionate outdoors people, and we're all engaged. So when we do product development, and it can be over any of our brands, we're really going through exactly why are we doing that thing on that garment and what's important, and why does it need to be there. To It could be fabric designs. I mean, that drive to not fail people and let people down when they're out there in a limited time perspective, trying to enjoy the time they have in an occupation, whether it's hunting or fishing. You don't want to let them down. You want to keep them warm. You want to keep them dry. You want to keep them cool. You want them to move around, and that drive to just always make things better. And I tell you what, that going back to you growing up on a farm, Thomas, and myself, I mean, we were the MacGyvers of the MacGyver before MacGyver was around. And I'm a little older than you, so because I was around before VHS was around, and shit, we weren't buying magazines. I mean, that was for what people with money had. I mean, we were learning through the school hard knocks, out there doing it and using whatever we could to actually go enjoy it. So our constant drive to be authentic, to improve, to be better every day, and to make sure that you understand the responsibility when you're selling product, that people are actually need to be able to afford it, and it needs to be able to work when they go to battle, whatever they are doing. I mean, it's a great joy and a lot of excitement, but it's also a responsibility that we have, behind everything we do every day.
Well, there have been countless scenarios on the water in the woods where I've had a product fail, and fortunately, I can't think of a single time in particular where it cost me the trip or cost me a trophy whitetail or uh, I might come up with it while I'm thinking here, but there have been a couple times on the water where a product that I believed in failed and it cost me a fish. And there are multiple companies that I've worked with. I know personally is probably some of the same people that that if I made a phone call, they're like, done. You just give me your address, we'll take care of you. And that might be a benefit that, admittedly, it probably is a benefit I have now working at In-Fisherman, because let's be honest, there are people that don't want curators like myself to have their product fail in the real world. But there are companies that I was not affiliated with when I was in my younger years, even probably as a freelancer, um, that when I reached out, they were quick to respond, and replacements are on the way. And I'm not foolish enough to think that all products never fail. Like, things happen, and if there's a brand that's going to stand behind their products in the moment of truth, if something doesn't work, and they're willing to back you up, like that makes me a customer for life.
Yeah.
And I There are countless examples of mistakes I've made, like stepping on a rod or shutting it in a car door or whatever it is, and even then they've taken care of me. So I think there's a fine line between being reasonable, but the authenticity that you talk about is a very important part of why you're capable of making good products. You don't want to put something out there you got your name on that's a piece of crap. Nobody wants that. And you guys live by that standard. I'm not tooting your own horn, but I know because of that scent lock bag that I have, um, it's fantastic. Why doesn't everybody put a zipper on their bags like are on that bag? Because the other ones I have don't have a zipper in them anymore.
Yeah, it's all about, trying to do the right thing. And we work really hard with testing and, the right fabrications, the right manufacturer relationships. But at the end of the day, Thomas, you will fail people inevitably. We do. It just happens. And, one thing that I always think when I think about this notion about the customer, I always think about Jim Cabela back in the Cabela's days when I was there. And Jim, although he was more involved in the business early than he was late, one thing that he always did is he looked at every customer comment card. And what Jim would do is he'd divide up the comment cards by merchandising department and say he'd deliver those to you in merchandising. So if you're responsible for category goods, whether it's fishing or hunting or boots or whatever, he gave you those comment cards, and he didn't even have to say to take care of it. He wanted you to take a look at it, understand it. Is it a brand issue? Is it a product issue? Follow up with customers. So even though you don't do everything right, because it's inevitably impossible, it's how do you do service recovery well? How do you take care of, the Thomases just as well as the guy that's, working ground level? And how do you treat people right no matter who they are? Because there will be failures in this business. So how you recover from that missed expectation, and how you take care of people is just as important. And it's just something that has always been with me. I guess it's probably the way I grew up, but Jim really cemented that with me. And, certainly as we think about our customer and our brands, multiple brands here at Nexus, we try to really act small, which is take care of everybody. And, make sure even though you might have failed them, you're going to take care of them the best you can.
Hmm. There's a couple circumstances I can think back on, and my dad was a roofer by trade when we were young. He eventually got into sales of commercial roofing components and things like that. But um, he told me, he's like, if you're going to put a roof on somebody's house, like, it sucks to put shingles on. There's no one that's going to argue that. If I'm going to roof your house, I must really care about you, because I despise roofing to the hilt. Although I totally respect it. But Dad was like, if you don't want to come back and do this a second time, you better do it right the first time. And it's going to cost you as a business owner extra money to replace it or to fix it or to do whatever. But especially if you're offering any type of guarantee, if you're offering any type of warranty, you want your product to stand up to those warranties. You don't want to have to come back, and you don't want to have to apologize to folks that hired you to do something, because ultimately that isn't a good reflection. If it happens over and over again, that's even worse. But I think that there's a point where I don't know that I learned that then, and my dad would tell you it took me a long time to learn some things. He's definitely right about that. But I kind of came upon that point later in life. I was actually working in a retail store, and I got tired of doing the same crappy job, so I figured out a way to do it like once or twice, uh, and then not have to do it again. So I was inspired at a point to redirect how I was doing what it was I was doing, whatever, if it was stacking lumber or if it was sweeping a shop floor, or I worked in a sheet metal shop for a while. I didn't want to have to repackage things that were getting sent out. So what was your aha moment when you decided, hey, I want to do better for people? There was clearly a point in your life, you had learned to fish, you learned to hunt, you were experiencing success, but there was a point where you kind of turned off and thought, A, I think I want a career doing this, and B, I want to be better than everybody else. What was that moment for you?
Yeah, I think, it's a little bit tough, Thomas. I would just say, I think from from the early beginnings of my life, I wanted to win and I wanted to be successful. And I think through, I hate bringing everything back to the farm, but I also understood at a very early age, things are earned and they're just not given. And, I don't care if you were trying to raise a crop or raise a steer for show at the 4-H, or it takes work to get places. And I think that work ethic, and wanting to be better and succeed, I just really don't have a single moment outside of that's just the way I was shaped through my youth. And, I think from sports, being competitive in sports to, I was okay in school, not great at school. But then when I got into the professional workforce, I would tell you one thing that probably drove me the most is never wanting to disappoint anyone. And when you have that, carry that burden of, I don't want my mom or my dad or my friend or my cousin, I just don't want them to be disappointed. It's kind of a curse, from the bad side of it, because you're always worried about disappointing someone. But the blessing is it drives you to think, to drive and figure out how to solve something, go to root cause analysis. If it's a process and operation, or if it's a garment, you're never I mean, there's really never a finish line. And I don't see life as a finish line. I see it as, it's the finish line is always out there. So you're always just trying to, do better and work harder. I think those that have it, and those that don't, it's a lot easier world. I think about my kids, and I think about the contrast between how I grew up to how they grew up, and nothing wrong with it, but they've had a freaking pretty easy life in my mind. I think until you've dug a ditch, when you say tell your dad, well, yeah, I'm bored. Well, you say you're bored one time, and then you're digging a hole and you're filling it
That's right.
in. That's how
I knew
that's
that.
how he taught me, man. You say
Same
that
in my
once in your
house. I
life,
knew
and then you're
better. I knew better. I knew better to say I was bored, because he's like, "Oh, good, because I got stuff I need you to go do." And it didn't necessarily keep me to avoid or teach me to avoid the work, but I think I kind of realized the value of hard work when somebody was depending on me, and whether that is an employer, whether that's a tournament partner. My dad and I have it's a laughable history, because he was an incredibly hard worker, and I worked hard when I wasn't at the house. But when I was at the house, if I said I was bored, he's like, "Get out there and trim the tree." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think so." And so it took me the same as you. It took me understanding that if I didn't fulfill what I had committed to doing, I was letting somebody down. And I think the one or two times that happened, I never wanted to feel that again. So I committed to working hard. And I would there are days, I'm sure you have these once in a great while, maybe not, but once in a while, especially if we're snowed in, I don't feel like I've accomplished anything. And I need to like set an hour aside at the end of the night where I can send an email that's on my list, or whatever the case may be. Just make sure that I've done something productive on a daily basis. And it's kind of rubbed off on my son. He's 16 now, and this is a true story. This just happened today. Um, he and I fish a lot of bass tournaments together locally, and I found a league night to sign us up to fish another night. So that would be 2 nights a week that we fish. And he's sitting there, he's kind of being quiet. I'm like, "What's up, bud?" He's like, "Dad, I work that night." I said, "Well, you can get your schedule rearranged." He's like, "I want to buy a boat." I said, "Okay. Well, we can still fish. Just get your hours in elsewhere." He said, "Dad, I don't think I need to fish that one." I'm like, I was not that kid. I would have been like, "Yeah, screw work. We're gonna fish as often as I can." But as I've let that percolate today, I mean this. Like, that's a man decision coming out of a 16-year-old boy. And that's my dad rubbing off on me, rubbing off on him. And his vision is, I want to buy a boat. I need to raise X number of dollars between now and whenever. And that's not going to happen fishing another tournament. That's going to cost us even more money. So I'm still going to go fishing, I guess. I might take his sister, but the bottom
well,
line is,
that's a beautiful moment, though. It is a beautiful moment because you just hope they know what the right thing to do is. Because I will tell you, my guess, Thomas, 8 out of 10 kids would go do what they want to for fun versus knowing they have a goal in mind, and I know how to get there. And that is life in a in a bundle, right? It's about making tough decisions what you want to do versus what you know you have to go do.
Yeah, that's right. And he's got a job that requires him to literally dig some ditches and to get his fingernails dirty. And I want, well, any young angler to have, how do you say, like, you got to put some skin in the game. And here's a question for you. This is a little bit of a controversial topic, and we don't need to necessarily dig into the rights or wrongs with forward facing sonar and things like that, but there is a very strong group of young anglers coming into professional fishing nowadays that a lot of the older group, they're kind of grumpy about it, like, well, they didn't put in the time and effort that I did. They didn't have that the skin in the game or the innovation. Really, some of these guys broke ground to change fishing in their day. But ultimately, like you said, your kids have had it easier, mine have had it easier to an extent. But wasn't that our goal initially? Was to lay groundwork to make others more proficient quicker and shorten that learning curve? And my question to you is have we taken it too far, or is it indeed too easy for some of these younger anglers to get there? Or maybe they've got the right foundation to succeed. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's deep. So here's I guess my analogy. I'll take it. We'll start in hunting, and then we'll go over to fishing. I believe being a good woodsman, in other words, walking the woods, knowing what to look for, whether it's deer beds or scrapes or rubs, understanding bedding locations, understand feeding locations, understanding weather changes, understanding how wind affects deer movement. I think being a good woodsman, likening it to understand the basics, makes you a lot better hunter. Couple that with technology in the hunting space. Think about cameras. Think about other cameras. I would tell you cell cameras probably the biggest one, and take on think about better camouflage clothing. Think about better equipment. I think all that stuff coalesce and make you better and allow you to do things that you might not be able to do. But I'm telling you, being a good woodsman versus just watching a cell camera, I think two
Hmm.
different things. You're
Agree.
better if you have the base and the foundation. So, switching over to the most popular subject, which is forward facing sonar,
Let's
um,
have it.
that that's difficult. I'm kind of old school. I'm 53 years old, so I would like to think that there's some basics that people understood: how to be safe on the water, how to understand fish movement, how to understand patterns, knowing the progression of fish. I like when wisdom and experience does pay off. I like that the old dudes that have leathered face that know that lake and have been through the school of hard knocks. I like when they get paid off, frankly, because I think that's
Hmm.
sort of a you know, just what you should just get when you're at that point. The wisdom and experience should combine and make you more successful. And I think that's probably the biggest battle is those years of experience and woodsmanship on or watersmanship, if that's even a word. It's forward facing sonar is kind of flying in the face of that. So, who would ever think walleye fishing would be a spot and stock game? Oh, trust me, I've done a lot of jigging and walleyes over my life, but it was it was more stock and just throwing at a bank than it was not casting unless you saw a fish, right? And
Right.
so I think the walleye world's even changed. Certainly, I'm just watching live updates when I look left at one of our guys on the Jay Shakura on the Bassmaster Elite Series at St. John's, and I'm
Hmm.
watching what those guys are doing, watching how it's really shaped that. I think it's a very difficult conversation, and what I'm happy about is there's a conversation being had. To
Sure.
act like it doesn't matter doesn't get us anywhere, and I think there's going to be give and take. And I don't know if it's number of head units that you have, or number of units you have on your boat, how many screens you have. I think there's probably going to be some changes, and I bet that some people are better combining great ability and experience on the water with electronics. It allows you to see what's going on. but it's certainly a sensitive subject. I mean, I would even say I've used like, forward facing. I tell you, I've learned more ice fishing with it, with watching a
Hmm.
live camera and watching, sonar. And I love watching because I've learned so much about what I thought was happening versus what is happening. And it's made me better, but it's a very controversial subject.
Well, it is, and we're learning more about it here. Especially, we're implementing Hummingbird's Mega Live into some of our TV segments, and one thing I can tell you, like I feel like it's easy for some of the naysayers to sit back and say, well, it, they're making fish jump in their boat more or less, so they're taking an approach like that, like it gives an unfair advantage. But it really takes a commitment by the user to understand the technology, understand how the fish react to your presentation, or might even react to the sonar itself, as we're starting to learn. There's also an element of committing to staying up on your head unit updates, and there's just so much that goes into it that I have struggled to become good at it per se, but there've been a couple moments over the last year and a half where it's like, oh, well, okay, my casting. So I need to get back to a fundamental, right? So we just think for the most part, if you're flipping for bass on a grass line, you have a visible target that you don't know where the wrong spot is, right? Because let's say it's 100 yards long, you just got to make as many flips as you can to get your bait in front of as many fish as possible. Now, what I feel the valuable part is for me in that is I do better at boat control. I do a better job putting the boat in position to make a more accurate cast, and I got to focus on making an accurate cast. But if I just come into the game, have this technology handed to me, I'm not so sure I could make it work without the fundamentals being there first. And woodsmanship is a great example, a tremendous example. In fact, I there are some people that don't love this, but I love running cameras. Even if I don't hunt a place, if the landowner says, "Well, I got another guy hunting," I'm like, "Well, what if I put up a camera and I'll just send you pictures?" They're like, "Oh yeah, oh do that." I've done that numerous times, hoping it'd turn into something. It never did, but um, I get a huge kick out of just being strategic with the camera, putting it on a scrape. Some of the best trail camera photos I've ever gotten are bucks working licking branches and kicking up dirt. I get a kick out of that
By
because I
far.
feel like in a sense I've beat that animal, maybe even without having to kill it. I just got to see it do something that no one else got to see. So maybe my perspective with forward facing sonar kind of does that, is I'm getting to see fish interact with my bait, with the boat, with the structure, whatever it is, and you're right, it's teaching you something. I'm just I'm like you. I'm right in between the generations of, I feel like it's largely split via generations, like the for it's and the against it's. I'm in the middle, and I don't have an opinion yet. But
Yeah.
what I want somebody that has mastered the technology. If there really is a problem with it, if that is the case, and I'm willing to hear this, but that person has to master that technology before I think they can go out and speak against it. And that's what if this is unethical, I'm not sure. I think you and I are probably on the same page. Like there's parts of this I want to be like, let's hold on, folks, let's talk about this. But if there is an unethical component, I want someone that knows how to use the technology to speak to that, not someone that refuses to learn it.
And
Education
and
first, right?
there's a talent that, yeah, knowing, and there's a talent to even understanding how to use it. Because I spent a lot of time with Jay Shakurat and his dad Jason. So I think his dad Jason's my age, 53. Right, he's at Port Clinton, Lake Erie today on the NWT thing, and I give both those guys grief because Jason wants to be better with forward facing. He understands it's a club he needs in his bag, and he needs to evolve because it can sharpen his knife. Think about him; he's got all that on water experience, and he couples that with some forward facing sonar. But I'll tell you, Jay interprets and sees things better than Jason. And they're using the
Hmm.
same platform, if you will. So there is an art as well as understanding the technology. So, at the
But
end of the day,
Jason's an incredible angler, and I've watched Jay grow up. I've worked with Jason for many years. He's a good friend of mine.
yeah,
And Jay, he's a fishy kid. Like he was kicking butt on bass tournaments when he was in high school. So the foundation I think is there, and I would
exactly.
venture a guess that Jason was very adamant about making sure that Jay became a woodsman first. And I think that when you give an accomplished angler that has a solid foundation, you give them that edge with this kind of situation like forward facing sonar or cell cameras or whatever, they become that much more productive because their foundation fits right into what that information is providing. So I'm with you, but you know, we're not at the end of this. There's still a lot
No,
of
not at
conversation
all.
to happen, and Lord knows, I know there's something happening in Wisconsin right now, and if I had to guess here in Minnesota, there's probably going to be conversations in the near future about the efficacy and you know, if that needs to be curtailed. Surely that's going to happen in
Yeah.
probably the next couple of years.
Yeah. You know what I'm most excited about is what you said a moment ago is that regardless of the technology, I'm sure glad that high school and collegiate fishing are around. I mean, when you start talking about your son and I'm actually kind of glad it wasn't around when I was a kid because I think my life played out like it should be. And I got to do a lot of other things because I wasn't fishing at least competitively. I got to fish for fun with my dad, my uncle, and all the great weekends we had. But it's great to see. So in Michigan here, I've just been astounded, um, Thomas, by the number of clubs that are around, by the
Hmm.
height, the organization at the club level, the high school level, and getting integrated with these collegiate guys and going to the classics and seeing these kids and having young guys like Jay that they're trying to aspire. We had a little meet and greet in the park here when Jay came over last summer, and so he pulled his boat up into this park, and we had 4 local high school fishing teams come, and you should have saw these little buggers sitting around. Jay did a Q&A and asking them questions to taking pictures, and they want to be like Jay. I want to be like Mike when I was growing up, be a basketball player like Mike. They want to be like Jay. So it's so exciting to know that, none of these kids, my kids are well older than yours, Thomas, that I'm just glad because if you as a kid, there's a lot of different groups to hang out with. And if you're one of these
Hmm.
outdoor kids, there hasn't been, besides your dad or your uncle or your grandpa or maybe your buddy, that's you didn't have a group to like sink into and have identity with. So I'm excited for a future with or without technology of this
Yeah.
youth movement that I see, and I think it's just off the charts exciting.
It's super exciting and first of all, I would have probably got better grades had I had high school fishing. So there's probably an element where I would have done better, but same as you, like I'm glad we didn't, my course didn't change because there was a long time I thought I wanted to be a professional bass fisherman and it took me working at Bassmaster and spending 25 weeks a year on the road, covering every elite, a handful of opens, and others to realize I didn't have the stomach for a 4 day tournament. And so my son, though, just like what you're saying, I'm starting to see talent in him where I would like, I'm a part of me based on our conversation earlier about him wanting to work and not fish this second thing we were going to do. Part of me is bummed out because I'm like, I don't know who else I would fish with that's as good as he is. So he's come a long ways. He's a valuable tournament partner, but you're right. I'm super proud of him. Like we're gonna have a talk tonight. We're gonna sit down. We've actually got 27 rods and reels to put line on tonight, and I'm gonna tell him straight up, like you made a super mature decision that if I were your age, I would not have made. And I think that the overall drive to Tommy's got to spend some one time with Jay Shakurat. He was here this last fall
Nice.
and actually stayed at our house when we were doing a Strike King event. And Jay's like, I don't want to spend any money in a hotel. I'm like, get over here. And Jason and I have known each other long enough that I'm sure he told him I was safe. But Tommy got to hang out with Jay, and I've said, so do you think you want to fish? You've talked to Jay. He's hung out with some other pro anglers that are friends of mine, and he's like, Dad, I don't know that that's the direction I want to go. I want to fish tournaments, but I don't know that I want my life dominated that way. And again, I'm like, just where I was not that mature. I'm still not that mature. Let's be honest. I still ride the struggle bus on that. But the opportunity that he has to fish with guys like that is pretty awesome. And I've always been complimented on his ability to handle himself in when he's around other adults. And I think that comes from being confident. And I think that the confidence comes from having like-minded friends that you don't feel like you have to work to fit in. And you mentioned that a second ago. Like there are these groups now where it was seemingly in my day and probably yours, it was like the jocks and the nerds. It was pretty much
Yep.
separation. And that's no offense to the nerds because they're employing all of us now. So well, me anyways. But there's certainly a breakdown, a good breakdown in the school communities. Tommy also shoots trap. I don't mean to make this all about my son, but it is talking about the ability to fit in socially. He's got different avenues than we had when we were that age, and I think that makes these kids more capable of I guess identifying a goal, going after that goal, and maybe setting up their life at a younger age to achieve those goals. And Jay Shakur, it's a fine example. Had a fantastic angler as a dad, still does, and I think that he soaked all that in. And so being willing to learn, um, listening more than you speak, I again, there's another thing that this guy struggles with, but I value it when Tommy or his fishing partner, same way, they want to learn, they want to ask questions, they're sponges. So instead of, I got a question coming here, so we'll get there. Instead of wanting to be front and center, instead of wanting to stand on the stage and hold a trophy up, they want to get better now. They don't want to, they see the value in the journey, is really what I'm saying. And I think that you would probably echo this, that if you're willing to embrace the work to get to a goal, to get to an objective, whether that's being a college angler, maybe fishing the opens, or maybe it's owning a company, maybe it's working for a magazine. I can think of lots of different things that we would all relate to. You have to embrace the suck to get there. Because, like you said at the beginning, we have great jobs, but there's a lot that goes into this that people don't see.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think, I think that drive is super important because we fail a lot, and you gotta want it really bad. I liken it to, I'm not sure I want to do it over again every step of my
Hmm.
journey, but every step of the journey end up being a puzzle of your life, a piece of the puzzle of your life. And
Amen.
even people that go through tough times, I mean, they say, "Man, I'm glad that happened to me." Or it's that elk you end up killing that was 4 ridges away, and you hustled and had to get there, and you about killed yourself. But looking back, you're like, man, that proved grit to me. That proved hard work. And I just think all those things that happen to us, I think there's God's got a plan for us. And I think it's one of these things that you just got to really keep doing the right things and working hard. And those, it all works out, I guess, at the end of the day. Just getting these kids headed down the right direction. And think about guys like you and I have the great passion for the outdoors. I'm just glad there's a movement because it's,
Hmm.
hunting's not getting easier. Access is getting tougher. At least water has unlimited access. So I'm excited that, in the
Yeah.
outdoors, you think about participations down. You think about just, there's a lot of old guys getting older. So, I just really care about these kids getting the outdoors, and the crossover is very high for people that
Hmm.
fish, to hunt, to, it's a high crossover, which is important because, keeps them on both sides of it, where they're hunting and fishing, and hopefully they're bringing their kids up in that arena as well. We need more people that respect the outdoors, love the outdoors, and love everything that, God's given us to enjoy, for sure.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the things that you said right there that's important is there's a crossover. I think that in today's sporting world, I've noticed that there was a time I felt like you could do 3 and 4 sports as a high schooler, be successful at each, and that was the right way to go. Where nowadays it seems like you got to pick one and make it a year-round activity, and I don't particularly care for that because
Not a big
if you're doing the
fan.
travel
Not a big
baseball
fan.
thing or hockey where we're from, I I kind of feel like you're not getting the opportunity to experience more of these avenues, and maybe that's the culture of high school sports. My daughter is very involved in several high school sports. Tommy has chosen to do the fishing team and the trap team, and the point there is that it's all okay. But as a parent that loves the outdoors, I'm glad we're not traveling the state chasing a puck or basketball. I personally, I'm down with that. But if that's what they wanted to do, I guess we'd do it. But what's your experience in the change of, I guess, a sporting arena and the pursuit of something competitive? Because competitive fishing is certainly as competitive as anything out there. It scratches that itch for me,
Yeah.
and you got
Yeah.
to travel. But
I It's it's boy, that's tough. I'm old school on it. I'll go back to your sporty analogy. Well, I'll just say this. I think from my seat and looking back at my life, whether it's been my personal life or professional life, I think diversity is a really good thing for people. And I think diversity does a great job of opening your eyes to how other ways people see things, or you experience, like I would tell you, my sporting background is that I played football, I did basketball, I did track, and our football coach was our track coach. You had to go out for track if you want to play football, and got to play a little baseball in the summer. So I think that the diversity of the sports kept me really engaged. I couldn't wait. I loved every sport, but man, when we started a new sport, I had that new engagement. And
Huh.
I just don't think I would ever live. And I've seen some bad stories. Again, I'm not chastising anyone that picks a single sport and tries to be the best, because you could argue that doing one thing all the time makes you better. I'm not going to argue that. I'm just
Right.
arguing from an engagement and not making it a job, making it something that's fun. And I thank God we have seasons. If I didn't
Hmm.
have seasons in my life, whether it was the fall hunting season, or if it's waterfowl in January or December, or if it was spring walleye, or if it's turkey hunting, or getting in the summer and chasing fish again, to getting ready to go out west. I got an elk tag in New Mexico starting
Ooh,
in middle of September. It's just
awesome.
diversity for me, seasons for me is my
Hmm.
life. And not that I don't think I'd love living in the South and chasing bass all day, but I have a good buddy that lives in northeastern Iowa, which is a great friend of mine. Loves hunting. He thinks about deer 365, but he says, Aaron,
Hmm.
he grew up in the western sandhills of Nebraska. He goes, Aaron, I miss the diversity. And like, I love thinking about whitetail 365, but man, I miss getting my pit ready for goose season, or figuring out, other, chasing some other critters, from elk to, mule deer to antelope. So I guess my whole philosophy on this is diversity. So I love these kids are pursuing and competitive. I just hope they're getting other opportunities to experience other things, because I think all that comes together to make us better leaders, better
Yes.
dads, better husbands, more, compassionate to people who are going through things that you're not going through, or having a voice, whether, you talk about this electronics thing. Well, walk a day in their shoes and then come talk to me, you know,
Absolutely.
tell me what
Well,
it
and
feels like. So,
and one of the things too that you kind of mentioned this is these sports. I think all sports in general are filled with failure, but there comes a point, I think, in a lot of athletic sports where you kind of get it mastered, and not everybody, but you kind of just move forward, and it's success, success, success until you blow your knee out or something happens. But I think in the outdoors, there's a certain humility that gets instilled within us, because even the very best of anglers get humbled at tournaments. And the some of the best whitetail hunters I know, the stories that they love to tell are not necessarily their successes, but oh man, you wouldn't believe the one I blew it on. And I think that you have to come to a point where you embrace that part of the sport, embrace the suck, as I said, and embrace the failure. And I uh, who's that cat out east? Is it Gary Vaynerchuk? Does that name ring a bell for you? He's a motivational guy, and he's always talking about
oh,
being
yeah,
passionate
yeah.
about failure. He's and that's always resonated with me as an angler and as a hunter, because I don't feel like you're learning very much when you're successful all the time. It's the what sparks the mind to recognize a mistake or a misstep or a mismove, um, before you get there. And the only way that you have that perseverance is to really step in a pile of cow crap the previous time. And so you're looking before you take those steps. So if you can apply that to life, and I love what you said, because I married up, like most of us did, that have spouses that have put up with this for a long time. And, she recognizes I'm a better husband when I have a little bit of time to myself in the woods, or with my son, or with my daughter fishing or hunting. And because it's part of my job. I love my job. I love uh, the outdoors, period. But there's a recharge portion of that a guy has to have. I need to put the cameras away. I need to put my cutoff wrestling shirt on, and just go out and catch a fish by myself, to remind myself why I do what I do. And so I think that it all kind of comes back in a big circle where the crick made me, right? And there are times
Yeah.
I go back
Hmm.
there factually, like actually go back to that same body of water, but then also psychologically to remind myself, why we do what we do. Because every part of what we do is going to have components you don't like. There's stress.
Yeah.
There's staying up late. I bet as a business owner, you probably wake up sometimes at 2 in the morning, and like, oh man, I got to get started on this, and then you don't go back to sleep. It probably happens more than we want to talk about, but it's that
Yeah.
mindset that drives people to succeed.
Well, and you just hope, kind of back to, the opportunities to get outdoors too, some of those crick moments of your life that you referred to, Thomas, is think about some of those summer things that kids think about their mom and dad taking them camping on Memorial Day, and they're going out and fishing, or they're going out hiking, or whatever they're doing. And I think that's Chipper Jones said it the other day. I think it was Chipper was on social media. He says he's being asked about his kids doing sports over the summer and all that. He goes, nope, my kids will do sports during the school year, but guess what they're going to do in the summer? We're going to live as a family in the summer, and we're going to do
Hmm.
family sort of stuff, which, that could include knowing Chipper, probably include some outdoor stuff. So
Probably.
some of those key moments, that because people might not grow up fishing, they might not grow up doing traditional things, but, they may grow up and remember a memory at a lake, out canoeing, out kayaking, or out with their family in the summer. And that might lead to, hey, I want to go pick up a fishing pole, or I want to go in the woods and go hunting. So I think that summer family time that used to be traditional when we grew up,
Hmm.
besides a little base maybe in the front end of June, but July and August were always like, those were family time. So I'm glad I didn't have that with my kids, and I'm glad my parents didn't have that, because we were able to take some strike points growing up in the summers. And I look at these people that chase kids around. I'm like, man, I just hope they're taking some time to be together and do fun things in the outdoors.
Well, that is, I think everybody's, I think plan and life takes turns and it pushes you different directions. And I've learned that my daughter's very talented in certain elements, and she hunts and fishes she goes with me, and I think she goes to keep me happy. And I always tell her, like, if you don't want to go this year, you don't have to go. But we do, if you recognize that talent, whatever it is, I don't care if it's hunting or fishing for the sake of this conversation. If it's something you're passionate about, by gosh, go do it.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be hunting or fishing as a career. You can just find fulfillment in making people's lives better, making them more comfortable on the water, making them more successful in the woods, or on the golf course, or downhill skiing, whatever it is. Just take pride in that, put some passion behind it, and it's contagious. And Aaron, I'm starting to like you because of that, because I can feel your passion for family and outdoors. But I know just from our conversations that same drive, that same mentality, that same prioritization rolls over into your business life. And um, you can see it in the quality of a lot of these products. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because it's always fascinating to me. Like, I think we know you pretty well now from the standpoint of what gets you out of bed in the morning, but you speak of this obligation, or we owe it to the next generation, or we owe it to people that love to hunt and fish like us, to bring quality to them. So talk a little bit about Nexus, and I guess, where did that come from? Was that something you knew you wanted to do early on, or did you kind of work your way into it?
I really lucked into it. I had how I got in the outdoors, not the how I got into the business side of the outdoors is I had a colleague of mine. I worked at UPS, believe it or not, for the first 10 years after I graduated from college. And I was lucky enough to have a great college career director that says, Aaron, you better get your ass out and get an internship this summer. When I was a sophomore, he goes, you're going to do an internship your sophomore, your junior, and your senior year, or your sophomore and junior year of college. And he says, I got a guy that called me, some guy from UPS. And hell, I didn't know if UPS was USPS. I didn't know who wore blue and who were brown. I didn't know any of it. He goes, hey, Aaron, this is a good paying job. You go talk to this guy named Brett. So I went to UPS and interviewed with this guy named Brett. And he goes, Aaron, I got a summer job for you. I'm like, well, let's interview. Let's do this right. And ask me a few questions. I go, what is it? He goes, well, you're going to go door to door. You're going to go I was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and you're going to go up to every lawyer, engineering office, and legal office, anyone that ships overnight envelopes, and you're going to walk in and see if they need to ship things overnight. Because your job is to get new
Hmm.
business, and we're going to put these drop boxes. You're going to figure out where these drop boxes go. And anyway, long story short, I have some embarrassing stories of walking through and seeing a beautiful gal and talking from 50 yards away and walking up. And she goes, laughing, what did you just say? I'm Aaron Ambur with UPS. Do you ship next day air stuff? Anyway, long stories there, but talk about a lot of failure, Thomas. I'm telling you, it was tough. But long story short, I had a great career at UPS, and I had a good friend of mine, a boss of mine, that ended up going to Cabela's and running their logistics and shipping arena. And he knew, he knew I was a big outdoors guy. And he called me one day and said, Aaron, have you ever considered working for the world's foremost outfitter? And I was like, uh, what do you have? What do I need to interview
Mm.
for? So luckily, that's how it was just through, you know, it's just through this life that was mapped out that I walked through and had a great opportunity. So that's what got me into the business side of the outdoors, Thomas. And I tell you, I did I got a lot of different diverse opportunities there, from project management to Six Sigma and process control to strategic planning to merchandising and retail. And, it was a great experience. And when that started going another direction, I had opportunity to come out and join Nexus Outdoors. And actually at that time it was ScentLock. And since I've been here,
Mm.
we acquired the brands that you led the show in with. So just, by God's grace, got lucky and get to go to work every day, working hard. Like you said, nothing comes easy. I mean, it's a knife fight out there every day. It's a scrap, and there's a lot of brands, a lot of competition, a lot of people doing a lot of good stuff. I mean, it goes back to, it's a lot easier. There's a lot less barrier to entry into the
Hmm.
outdoors today as there were when I was growing up. There was a lot of barriers. Unless you got into Cabela's catalog and you had a new fishing reel or fishing, you couldn't go to the WWW. You couldn't create
Right.
a social site. You could go to some trade shows, but you couldn't blow yourself up. So it's tough and competitive. But I'll tell you, the passion for the outdoors. It is work, but man, I'm just glad I'm doing what I'm doing. Get to work with some great people. I mean, we talked about the Shakurits earlier, and the Next Bite guys and our whitewater fishing brand. Just people that I work with, but lifelong friends, because we have
Hmm.
this common bond, and they're all good people. Not everyone's good people, but the people I've got to work with, Matt Schiefelbein, you know, uh, Chase and Gary Parsons and the fabulous people I've met along the way. That's one brand. It's
Hmm.
just been a dream, honestly.
Well, one of your brands in particular, I want to spend a little time on. Uh, I have been through a lot of rain gear in my time, and one of the you might agree with this. I still have the four actually, if you consider the ice suit, but the Cabela's Guideware rain gear to this day is some of the finest rain gear I've ever owned. I still have just your standard shell, the lightweight stuff. I've got the
Yep.
mid-range stuff. I've got a heavier suit, and then the ice suit. Listen, that ice suit, it is the best ice suit as far as warmth and comfort. And I'm a bigger fella, so maybe that it fits my upper body and pretty well. But like I've had that for 15 years and it's going strong. We still use it every winter, but you guys have taken what you love and implemented it into rain gear. You understand what you don't like, and that's not necessarily going to be a part of the Whitewater brand, but you really do have experience molded into your product there. And I've talked with Jay about it. It's hard to find good rain gear. Some of the best stuff that let me rephrase that. Some of the stuff I have used that has been told is among industry standard is not. And it's frustrating. Like I don't know if there's a secret sauce to rain gear, but everyone I've talked to that wears whitewater love it. Why is that? What makes it a step above the rest?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking me. I love telling the story because, we have a great development team. So you think about, when I'm quoted, I say we have over 100 years of development expertise, and I will tell you that likens a little bit back to this fishing story. There's no forward-facing sonar in product development. I mean, it is a lot of trial by error and years of experience, whether you're picking out a fabric whether it's designers that understand how fit works and how to design product patterns. It takes a long time to develop factory relationships that can execute your vision on a garment and making sure they're taping and seaming things right to make garments waterproof. So there's a lot of experience that goes into that. And to that end, I own a bunch of guideware as well. I mean, you can imagine me working at Cabela's for 16 years.
Yeah.
I had access to the best stuff in the industry, and it's still one of my favorite pieces. At the same point, we talked about it earlier in the call about the drive to improve and to make it better.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
one of the staple, I would say, corner posts of our whitewater fishing brand was, you know what? Do you always need a 1 ton truck to go fishing? Um, and I liken that to some of the things we talked about with other competitive rain brand gears. I got tired personally of bending over and feeling like you can't pick up a jig off the floor. I got tired of ice fishing and not being able to move around. I got tired of pitching jigs and casting and lifting my arm and feeling friction every time that you lift your leg, you jump over a gunnel, you net a fish, you cast, and think about all the casting that's happening in traditional
Hmm.
stationary activities like walleye fishing. There's a lot going on. Every time you move, there's friction that's created. Every time there's friction created, it takes more strength to do it. Every time there's more strength needed, is the earlier fatigue happens. So one of our
That's right.
cornerstones was mobility. So what we try to do and what we've accomplished is maintain durability, but put a lot of strategic stretch and pattern work into making sure you're a mobile athlete, if you will, in the boat. I use it, don't take me super literal, but there's a lot of movement. I don't care what fishing you're doing. If you're casting for muskies, smallmouth fishing, largemouth fishing, if you're salmon fishing, you're moving around doing things. And we want to make sure people are comfortable, they were dry, they're warm, but most importantly, they can move and feel like, one of the things that the Bassmaster Classic ended a couple weeks ago, and we're lucky enough that we had Adam Rasmussen, so a big Wisconsin boy. You had Jay
Hmm.
Shakur. We end up with two top 10 finishes. Adam about pulled off the damn thing. But
I know
point
he
is
did.
that they're both using our gear, and the story I
Hmm.
like to tell is that Jay, he tends to be a little bit of a cooler guy. He's not big and burly, a little more slight, just runs a little cooler. And what I thought was amazing, he was actually using one of the products that we're launching for this fall, which is our insulated Great Lakes Pro. And he was using it during the Bassmaster Classic for many of the days. And it's not like Jay didn't have our soft shell jacket and bib, which is really stretchable, easy to use, good thermal value and protection, or he had our Great Lakes Pro uninsulated, which has great stretch. But he chose to use that insulated piece where,
Hmm.
and the reason I say that is Jay had all the options, yet think about all the activity he was doing, casting and grabbing his trolling motor, getting a fish. I don't know if you saw a story, those pictures of them reaching over the side and getting there. He had all the options, and he chose our
Hmm.
insulated suit because he wanted to stay warm, and he was able to pull that off an insulated piece. And I will tell you how many guys would go take an old ice piece or a 1 ton truck and be able to do what a bass guy is doing the Bassmaster Classic. They would give up warmth. They would give up anything just because they'd rather be cold and be agile, mobile, than they
Hmm.
would be warm and not be able to do their thing. So I think that's just a testament, um, Thomas, to what we're doing. That storyline of mobility and using the best fabrics, using the best designs, and I would say having a clean finish and not a garment that says, "Hey, here's Aaron Ambur," or "Here's Thomas." I just want to be a brand to fit in, be super
Hmm.
clean, have great design lines and branding, and I'm telling you, it's been really exciting. Not only because we've had success, but when you hear comments back that I can't believe, Aaron, that kept me warm and dry all day, and I love it. I can't believe no one has done this and brought mobility into garments, and we're just getting paid off for it, Thomas. It's been rather exciting to say the least.
Well, I've been one of those guys that's always I move around the boat quite a bit, and I think the younger generation of anglers, especially, Jay is a fine example. He is always moving and rarely a wasted motion, right? He's everything he does is for a reason. And just with any piece of gear, I don't care if it's long underwear to your leader material, like everything in between. You don't want it to fail when it matters most. And I think it's a testament if Jay's wearing, your base layers or whatever he's wearing during the most important bass tournament of his life and in the business. I think that's a pretty strong tell that he believes in it. And I think that it's important you surround yourself with people like that, and you guys have. Most of the guys you've mentioned on the show, I have some level of friendship with or know them well enough to pick up the phone and call, and I know that they're good people.
Well, you think about Chase and Gary Parsons. I mean, think about Corey Springle. Think about they've been in the product development world for a long time. Think about the Berkeley Flicker Shad. Think about what they do down in Iowa when they're working on baits. They understand how things need to work and how you need to create something yet it needs to be sellable. So I cut you off there, but just another example of those guys. It's not everything in this building, and it's just not us. It's our extension of our building, which
Right.
I include Matt and Jim Schiefelbein. I include Tommy Kimos. I think about Chase and Gary. I think about Corey. I think about Jay. I think about Jason. And those are the guys as we went through ideation and we said, here's what we're doing. What do you think? Here's some fabric and here's some prototypes. They've had choices to wear anything, Thomas.
Mhm.
They've worn a lot, more than I even have, and to get feedback from them, they're like, you guys are on the right track. And trust me, we're never perfect. We'll continue to evolve what we're doing and getting better. But that's a pretty good first start working with those guys over the last 2.5 years that we've been developing this line.
Well, one of the things I like about these guys uh, is they don't accept anything but function. Like they don't. They're. I think they are. We all understand nothing's perfect. Things come out in phases. But they've been working with like a Berkeley or in product development, and they have the confidence to say, hey, we like this, but we think this would work better if it were like this. And uh, you're open to that type of. Let's use the word criticism, but not necessarily criticism, like a collective effort to improve, innovate, and just make better for everybody. There's not a name that you just listed, and I know every one of them that they're not going to sugarcoat things. They're going to be honest. They're straight shooters. They're great men, but they are going to want to work with you to make the best product possible. And there are other brands that do that. I mean, that's not just unique to you or to Berkeley or to Loomis or to whomever. Everybody has. If they don't rely on that pro staff, then they aren't going to do very well. There are probably some companies. I know of some companies that don't do that kind of thing. But talk a little bit about how you guys work collectively. Is it a quarter of a year? Is it a half a year? Is it a full year of testing to make sure that what you're going to release in coming weeks, months, and year is adequate? How do you communicate with those guys and make the improvements that they request and suggest?
Yeah, the biggest thing that we do, here's an example. It's like Corey Springle was on Devil's Lake this year, ice fishing, and he goes out there and guides every year. He had 63 days in our insulated Great Lakes Pro bib. And I don't know how many days wore the jacket. He's in a cab and doing this. But my point is that you think 63 days, that's like 3 or 4 seasons for most average Joes, if you will. So
100%.
that's one way. So we had that in his hands before we released a production. We thought the cake was dressed perfectly. We made one alteration based upon his experience out there. One we could make. The other one we're gonna use it for an improvement, nothing catastrophic, just another top on the Sunday. So getting product finished and get it in a state in which we can have people testing in the season, preceding the season, does a couple things. Make sure, number one, it does everything you're promising it'll do. The second
Hmm.
thing is allows you to grab a lot of collateral. You get it. Developing stories about gear, getting imagery before the season starts to allow us to launch it the right way. And so I'm telling you what, the biggest surprise that I think the Next Bite team had and I knew all the guys before they got behind the brand, is they're like, You guys really communicate well. You actually listen to what we have to say. And again, there's a lot of brands that take input. I think they were a little blown away by our ability to accept uh, critical feedback or critical criticism or constructive criticism, whatever phrase you want to use, and actually
Hmm.
act upon it and have open ears to listen and to process and to say, how about if we did it this way? And I think that's been one of our secret sauces with getting input from, and it's just not because they're those guys. They're those guys because what you said their demands are, but they're those guys because they spend way more freaking days on the water than anyone you can align with. From a
Hmm.
product testing, a creative perspective. So that's, I would tell you, we have monthly calls to talk about what's working, what's not working, how the business is doing, what are we marketing, and because they want to help us. And Thomas, they just want to help not only on the product side,
Hmm.
but they want us to be very successful. So I couldn't, and I credit Jim Schiefelbein to help, from hooking me up with these guys and creating friendships way before we had any business relationships going on. So it's been a good journey. I think it's going to be a long-standing journey, and I think the whole crew understands this is not about the sprint. The marathon is 26.2 miles. And this isn't a flash in the pan. We're going to make the right decisions for the long term, and all that testing and that communication allows us to get it as best as we can, Thomas, before we launch it.
Well, and I think that goes back to what we talked about when it comes to embracing the suck. You're going to have things that are going to fail, and the only way that you can improve upon that is to put them to the test. And you talked about Corey being on the water, so that wasn't just like from August to the end of the year. That was ice season. 3 days on the ice
Yeah.
in one of the most in uninhabitable parts of the country. And I lived in North Dakota. I lived in Minot for several years. Like, you want you want to talk cold. Like, if you want to really test a product out, that's a place to do it. So if anybody is looking into whitewater, you can understand that it's put through the paces in hostile environments by professional anglers that use them the way they were designed to be used and then some. And that provides the kind of feedback for your R&D team to make things better, to make them more reliable. And I don't think you want someone to buy a rain suit they got to replace every year. I feel like you produce the kind of product that you want the customer to have faith in for a period of years. Now, rain gear wears out. We all know that. Um, but I'm telling you, some of that guide wear still works as well today as it did back then. But you're right. The mobility has always been the factor, and like I say, things get tight on me, and that's something that I'm hopeful to. I'm working on that. We'll just say that much. But thinking about what makes people happy on the water, first and foremost, is almost comfort, and knowing that you've got a crew of anglers putting things to the test and making things better, like that gives me confidence, like that inspires me to want to go to your website and look some stuff up and learn some more. And we hope that by the time we're done here, that people have checked things out. And this is not to sell you
Mhm.
anything. I'm interested in your drive for perfection, your drive to make the best product possible. And I know these guys. I know what they demand out of their gear, and it's the same with a lot of the professional bass and walleye anglers out there. That's the proving grounds, and to know that that's the crew and the class of people you're working with, I'm gonna pat you on the back for that, because those are the same kind of guys I'd want to align with as well. And I think that speaks volumes that you're building relationships, you're creating confidence, and ultimately inspiring people to check something out that's going to make their time on the water more enjoyable. And that means you're going to stay out there longer, and that's going to mean more fish. So I'm not really sure there's a better way to illustrate why you give a rip about making a great product, is because you want people to catch more fish. You want them to enjoy their time and make better memories while they're on the water. I believe that.
Yeah. We have this tag called Brave the Waves. So you think about, there's no better proving ground than the upper Midwest. You think about the Great Lakes from a 365 fisherman. It's unbelievable. You think about from the Wisconsins to the Ohio's, to the Michigans, and the Great Lakes. It's a brutal, you want brutal conditions, come the Great Lakes. Ask the guys down in Lake Erie right now, right? But we have this tagline called Brave the Waves, and it's literal and it's figurative in the fashion that our promise to the consumers is that We're going to protect you from the sun. We're going to protect you from the water. We're going to protect you from the cold and clement environment. We're going to protect you from that wind and all those things that get in your way. And our promise to you is that if we protect your body and make you comfortable so you can fish longer and be comfortable, we're going to help you control what you can control. And then you can worry about the other waves, the current changes, the water clarity changes, the barometric changes, the competitive guys that you're trying to get against every day and outperform. So that's what I can do to help your journey be more successful. And at the end of the day, Thomas, people buy stories. You may think they buy products, they buy stories. And I hope
Mhm.
as we've talked through the whitewater story today about, what are our cornerstones, what is the passion, what's the collaboration, what's the criticism we take behind the scenes, that they really get, hey, I trust and I hear what they're doing, and that's
Yes.
someone I want to give a chance to, and I want to check out. And at the end of the day, I think we're creating great stuff, Thomas. So I'm excited for, this is really the second year in the outerwear. We had UPF stuff the first year, so it's been 2.5 years of journey, and I'm telling you, it feels like it's rolling right now, and it's just exciting. It really is. And then get to chat with guys like you about a fishing brand. It's great.
Well, there is something that binds us all together, and that's the drive to succeed. And I think that we connect often in our failures because we've all stubbed our toe. But knowing that there are people out there that are looking to improve upon and innovate and bring a better product out as often as possible, that inspires me to be willing to invest more. And look, rain gear is not cheap. Base layers, used to be able to go to Walmart and Fleet Farm and buy a set of the old the double barrel whitey tighties, and that would you'd have to wear 3 pairs of them to stay warm. But now you're spending more money on a better quality product that's going to last and perform better. And I think that as a consumer, generally we've accepted that. And boats are an example. Boats are very expensive, but you are getting a lot of those kinds of amenities in a quality boat that you might keep that for a really long time, but you're going to have the confidence that it's going to stand up to the true test of everything. And but we're going to wrap this up pretty soon. I got two more quick questions. The first one is, within the whitewater lineup, I know that rain gear and outerwear is something, but what else is involved in the whitewater product line? I know there's more.
Yeah, so here's how I think about the whitewater brands. Certainly, you need those styles, if you will, in your assortment that battle inclemency. So you talked about rain. So we have definitely a couple different rainwear pieces. We have the Great Lakes Pro and the Great Lakes. So you think about that outer shell to keep you warm, to keep you dry, to keep the wind out. Got that covered. Frankly, I'm wearing a vest today called the it's a heated vest or whitewater. So no one has brought, there's been heated vests around for quite a while. We do a lot of them in the hunting space, but we said no one's bringing a lightweight, packable, Primaloft insulated, heated vest. So you think about I don't care if you're jumping up in a tree stand hunting, or you're talking about mobility and fishing. The less you can wear is the more agile you'll be, the
Hmm.
more mobility you'll have, and less fatigue. So we said, you know what? We're great at heated vests. Let's take that heated vest technology, put it in a great thermally insulated, nice nylon face. So this has been a really good seller for us. Guys can carry, you carry one battery that rocks, pumps the jams for 6-8 hours, or if you're in a boat, you can have another battery and USB. So think about this, wearing this with a bib in a shell, you can keep really warm. It pumps the jams in the chest and the back and keeps you warm. So,
Hmm.
we're getting into merino. So most people think about merino for cold weather. Well, yes, merino is a great item for cold weather, but we're actually pushing the limits on merino technology and yarn development to actually compete. We have some poly products. So you think about, we have a raised hoodie, which is a poly tech hoodie that you wear for bass fishing. Think about warm conditions. Well, we're bringing in merino and 120 weight. We believe merino can complement, if you will, be another solution for that guy that wants a hot weather environment. So you think about
Hmm.
merino, think about cool mornings and cool evenings. It thermal regulates. So like poly, fabric. You'll feel cool in the mornings, cool in the evenings. It'll be a little sticky during the day, and great. It's a great solution. It's a lower cost solution. We sell a bunch of them, but I'm like, I know merino. We've been in the hunt space. You can wear it in warm weather conditions. So we're bringing merino, has great antimicrobial, great stretch, great wicking ability. So we're pushing the limits even on merino in the fishing space. No one's doing it, Thomas. No
Hmm.
one's doing it. And yet we have experience to, we have, certainly shorts, and we have a great pant that we call the Prevail pant, which has zippers on the side to to dump heat. It has multiple zipper pockets. It's a great not only fishing pant, but what we find, Thomas, is we have a lot of gear that people want to wear because they want to express I'm in the outdoors. It's
Hmm.
stylish. It performs. It not only performs under conditions, but if I want to go, hang out and go to dinner with my wife, I can wear a pair of Prevail pants, or I'll go to dinner with my wife tonight with my merino top and my vest. So having not only items that perform under the toughest conditions, but yet allowing those purchase dollars, you talked about it, things are expensive these days, to allow
Hmm.
those garments to be worn off the water. Whether you're like, I'll use my Prevail pants. I'm actually doing getting ready to plant corn on my farm right now. Doing food plots, working on my UTV. So these garments not only work good for intended use, but they're good lifestyle pieces, and they perform off the water. And I think a brand that thinks about that, not only being true to your core, but thinking about how you allow that dollar to extend beyond the boat, if you will,
Hmm.
so that you want to wear it because it's just damn comfortable. It just feels good. And you support something that is in your soul. You might be an outdoors person, and you're like, I'm proud of this. Yeah, I'm proud of this left chest,
Hmm.
and I want to be affiliated with those that have my core values that align with the conservation and align with the outdoors and helping kids get into fishing or making people perform better on the water. We have a lot of opportunities for a brand, and that's what I hope why people want to get into us.
Well, and above everything else, they're battle tested, they're proven, and they're made by people that care about the outdoors. And not to say that other brands of other whatever, you can think of anything that are produced by people that don't fish and hunt, but you have this collection of outdoor enthusiasts, and they're passionate, they're hardcore, some of the best in the respective industry and parts of the outdoor space. They have put this stuff to the test, and it's worked wonderful. And to me, that's one of the strongest selling points you can possibly have.
Amen.
Well, I got one last question for you, and we're going to wrap this up. We've done pretty well. We're at an hour and a half. I mean, at least the recording time. So,
Isn't it
I
course
hope
30
it's been
yet? I
entertaining.
should have.
Well, you're on Eastern time. I mean, I guess you're closer than me, but um, so you shared a little bit about your past, about coming up and becoming a driven outdoor fanatic. You've made it your career. I think that there's a big portion of this I want people to take away from, and that's you can make your career your passion. But give some words of advice to maybe this younger generation we referenced a little bit ago. If you're looking to have a career in the industry, and they're starting out, they're starting to focus on what's next, maybe it's college, maybe it's a career, what advice would you have to incoming young people if they're looking at a career in the outdoor space?
Well, I tell you, getting your education, I'm going to start there, is always important. I'm a still big believer. I love the trade business. I wish there was a trade school for business and marketing kids. I think that would be really nice, but we're not there yet. Certainly get your education. Certainly get opportunities. Life is as much about figuring out what you don't want to do is what you want
Hmm.
to do. A lot of people want to pick the first perfect best career. I wouldn't get hung up in that. I would try to pick a career or pick a company that aligns with your values, because you think about your work family. Hell yeah, I spend more time with my work family as I do my family. And so I think my advice is to, in that first opportunity, go and get into a culture that you like, the people and the culture of what you can discover right off the bat, and and hopefully, with the outdoor industry these days, if that's one of you that want to get in the outdoors, there's a lot of opportunity to get involved. I mean, you can choose to be I make a field staff person with a given company. So many companies like ours are looking for, field staff people. People are out there creating digital content and actually creating inspiration and things, not selling product, but just, the outdoors. We have some great field staff people on Whitewire. They're out there making reels and providing digital content so we can continue to make our brand alive. So I will tell you, in my day, and Thomas, your day, there wasn't this thing called social media, and there wasn't as many job opportunities in this space. So if you're talented with a camera, if you're talented creatively with making videos, or you're talented with a product, there's other ways to have soft entries into companies. Because I tell you what, I look at field staff, young kids. One of the young kids that actually runs our social media, Thomas, Kyle's his name. You know how I got Kyle? Kyle's a graduate of GVSU in Grand Rapids, and he
Hmm.
graduated with a marketing degree. And you know how we discovered him? We discovered him through a social media channel, and he was doing some little YouTube, and we connected with him, and we developed a relationship before we had a job opening, and at some point we had a job opening to take our social media from offsite to in house, and we had a relationship with Kyle because he was one of our field staff people, and we knew his talents. So Kyle, you come talk to us, you know, and he came and talked to us, and he'd been doing a lot of social media stuff. So that's just an example for at least the listeners. If you're one of these young kids, there's way more opportunities than old guys like myself and Thomas to get engaged. And I would also tell you, just don't think you're too good for anything, because
Hmm.
many of the small opportunities that might exist might be as small as a field staff member. It might lead to other things, and just getting your foot in the door. It might not be the perfect job. It might not be the perfect company, but get in there and get some experience so that you can, through your journey of the different opportunities that come in front of you, you have some experience and you understand business or marketing, and you get into a company and just start. Let life play itself out. Don't be one of those guys that demands so much that all the doors close for you. You have drive, but just start moving forward. Start, as Thomas you say, start the grit, start the suck,
Hmm.
start failing, get in there and just start grinding it. And my belief is good things usually happen to good people. So go work hard, go have grit, show up and give it your all, leave it all on the field. And through my experience, things will typically take care of themselves. So I'm just glad that there's a lot of outdoor companies and a lot of opportunities for young kids these days.
Well, and I think we've got a deep talent pool coming up. In my son's generation, there's a lot of kids that are very talented already. My son has become quite proficient at recognizing elements of product that we use on a regular basis that he likes, and he can explain that to his friends, and they understand it. Whereas, I had a Zebco 33 that I used for a very long time that eventually shelled out. Had to talk my mom into buying me a new one, but you really, you're right. You need to look at what you want to do, and I'm a firm believer. I've always been a believer in this. It took me a while to figure it out from junior high to high school, but hard work, work ethic, respect for other people, and being willing to smile with somebody, talk with them, look them in the eyes, and treat them with respect, and understand that their walk of life is a little different. But ultimately, your life has been different, Aaron, than mine. But we've had a lot of parallels, as we've discovered in this conversation. And I think that the heart of the outdoor industry is that in itself, is that we have a common passion. We have a collection of objectives that really point towards the same thing, and that's the pursuit of this sport we love, hunting or fishing. It's the outdoors. And if you find something within that you're good at, there's going to be steps along the way that you maybe don't like. There's going to be parts of the job that maybe aren't that great. In fact, one of the best things I've admired about bosses I've had in the past is their willingness to get down in the ditch, throw the shovel around, and do some of the dirty work with you. And I think that the outdoor industry is made up of that in a nutshell. There's a lot of guys, a lot of men and women. It's just not, that love the sport and they're willing to contribute. Just get involved, and I like what you're saying. Find your direction, start working towards it, embrace that suck, and eventually the hard work's going to pay off. And I think that
Amen.
you're gonna live well because of it. Aaron, I really appreciate this. This was fun. I knew we were going to get into some good conversation. And one last thing, if people want to check out a little bit more about Whitewater and some of your other brands, where can they go?
Yeah, I think that one of the first entries on the interstates, go check out our social channels. So we do a great job on Facebook and Instagram. So whitewater fish, check us out, and then our websites, whitewaterfish.com. So education, blogs, you can learn about product. We even Kyle, one of the kids we talk about, he's back behind a desk, his job, social media, he's back there talking about garments and what he likes about them. So go visit us there, follow our social channels. And I just hope that, whether you're ready to buy or not, I could care less. I just hope that you're intrigued by what we're doing. And if we're so lucky at some point in time that you want to, give us some dollars to take care and make your outdoor journey more successful, more comfortable, we'd be humbled for it, and we'll take care of you. And just again, Thomas, appreciate the time today. It went fast, and just appreciate the opportunity to get to chat with you and learn more about you and talk about the passion that both of us have, and which is a great outdoors. It can be better.
Well, I hope we can share the woods or water together sometime. We probably ought to start making those plans now because summer's right around the corner. And I'm counting the days. We got snow here in Brainerd today, which made me a little bit grumpy. But hey, Aaron, thank you so much. You've been listening to In-Fisherman Storyline. This has been a Front Porch edition. Special thanks to Aaron Ambur. He is the president of all things at Nexus Outdoors. I'm Thomas Allen, and we will catch you here the next time we sit down and talk about fishing. We appreciate you being here. See you then.